SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Are you tired of dents and scratches ruining the look of your car? Look no further than Porter's Body Shop in Brookhaven. Call us at 601-833-1861 or visit us online at portersbodyshopms.com.
Oh, yeah.
Good morning, Mississippi.
Everything gonna be all right this morning.
Mornings with Richard Cross.
Oh, yeah.
Here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Woo! Now, when I was a young boy, at the age of 5, my mother said I was gonna be the greatest man alive.
Today is February 18th, 2025. Welcome to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for starting your day with us alongside Lance Tolbert. I am happy to be with you. Much to get to this morning. We got a whole bunch, including the Speaker of the House, Jason White, who's going to join us in studio in the 7 o'clock hour. And, man, a lot of ground to cover with the Speaker. Among the things that we will talk about with Jason White, tax bill, where that negotiation process is, what that negotiation process is going to look like. School choice, is it dead, or just kind of dead? Is there any way of reviving it? Is there any need to revive it at this point? And a bill that was passed yesterday unanimously that would authorize paid parental leave for state employees. So up to 8 weeks for parents after having a new child or adopting a new child. So we'll get into all of that and a whole lot more this morning. Also, Dan Stein, who is with FAIR, Federation for American Immigration Reform. He will be along this morning, and we'll talk with him about some of the progress that's being made in terms of border efforts. There was a story that popped up yesterday that showed the border crossings were now below 300 in a given day. And that was lower than at any point in the Biden administration and was, about 8%, 7% of the high of 11,000 border crossings per day. So there's progress that's happening there, but what does the immigration roundup and everything else look like continuing going forward? But we do start things off by saying good morning to you. A chilly day across the state of Mississippi, and man, it's going to be. You got some baseball coming up today, and it is going to be a cold day for baseball. Though they catch a little bit of a break in Hattiesburg, 32 degrees this morning in the Berg. Southern Miss, Mississippi State playing at 6 o'clock tonight. Going to be in the 50s. I think it's going to stay in the 50s for most of that ball game. 31 today in Starkville, 41 to start your morning in coastal Mississippi, 30 degrees in North Mississippi, and we got some cold coming up over the next couple of days. Lance, good morning to you.
Good morning, Richard.
How are you, brother?
I'm doing good. Ready for some cold weather. You know, we had.
Are you?
Yeah, born ready for that. I'm not ready for the summer yet. I like the cold, and we're going to get another snap, so everybody needs to be prepared. We've been predicting it on the Garden Mama for a little while, so you never want to go out on a limb too far. But yeah, we this is that time.
Y'all paid attention to the groundhogs, so you decided there was one more snap coming?
Yeah, I'd pay attention to Garden Mama. She knows what's coming, so she's the expert. But yeah, I'm looking forward to a little cool snap, and probably be downhill after that with the cold weather. But if we can get at some of those 50s and 60s like we had the other day, where you were just sitting outside and the sun was beautiful. You're in a T-shirt,
Yeah, that's real good.
Oh, God, come on, man. That's real good. Looking forward to those days. They're coming.
I think what I've learned, and this isn't like breaking ground, I like all 4 seasons.
Yes.
It's like God's plan was pretty good.
Yeah.
We're in the middle of the summer, and I'm ready for it to cool off. I'm ready for some fall temperatures. We get into fall, and it's like, come on, give me some snow. Let's get it cold. Let's pull those sweaters out. And then after, about late January, it's like, all right, let's warm this thing on up. Baseball season's around the corner, ready to see some green. Gray has done its thing. Let's get gray out of here and green everything back up. And summertime. And I know it's hot and I know it's humid, but it's our summer and it's, a little slower pace and a good bit of time on the water and it's all good. Then you're ready to do it all over again. So.
Yeah, the summer will be here before long. It'll be beach trips and travel ball and getting ready for football before you know it. Goodness, it just passes so quickly these days.
Maybe we should slow down just a little bit.
Exactly.
Stop and smell the roses.
Hey,
this is my wife's grandfather used to say.
Well, this is rose pruning time too. So if you're getting ready to have an amazing, flower bed full of roses, make sure you round them out a little bit, get those rough edges off, and even them out, and you'll get a lot more buds off of them. So
I texted you guys the other day. I said I know the question's been asked a million times. My apologies. What do I do with my hydrangea?
Yeah.
And,
that was you. Okay, I thought it was you. Yeah, hydrangeas, they're tricky, but
yeah,
Nellie knows all there is to know about the hydrangea. That's a fun one, too, and a beautiful flower. It's just, I love that time of year. You get to Easter, all the colors start popping. You get Valentine's Day behind you. It just, the colors start coming back. Like you said, the grays go away and colors start popping, and that's a beautiful time of year. I know that my grandmother was an artist, loved painting flowers, so I'm kind of one of those. I love it when the flowers start blowing. The first ones up there in Oxford, though, I always love you're driving around and all of a sudden you see the little jack straws popping up, the yellow flowers everywhere where the old house sites used to be. That's when spring's a-coming.
It is a-coming. On this day in 1885, Mark Twain in the United States published a book that, would change the lives of a lot of little boys for a long time. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Commonly named among the great American novels, the work is among the first in major American literature to be written throughout in vernacular English characterized by local color regionalism. It's told in the first person by Huck Finn, the narrator of the two other Twain novels, Tom Sawyer Abroad and Tom Sawyer Detective. He was a friend of Tom Sawyer, direct sequel to the Adventures of Tom Sawyer. It was one of those books that took you to a different place. And to me, that was the magic of it. Of course, Mark Twain, Samuel Clemens' pen name, one of the great authors of all time. I don't know, maybe worth pulling out The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and maybe have to do a little bit of editing in the way you read it to your kids, but read it to the kids nonetheless. We got 3 big birthdays today, Lance.
Right.
We said we would hold it to 3. I got 3 for you.
What you got?
Enzo Ferrari.
Okay, yeah.
Started out as a race car driver. Had a family. Saw kind of a bad wreck. Was like, I ought to be on the engineering side of things. Was working for Alfa Romeo. Got back to the track at one point. Started an auto parts company. Spawned Ferrari.
Pretty good car. Nice history there of winning races, like real races, not on the street, but like prize money. They kind of own that field for the longest time.
Yeah, that's not like racing for Pink's cars.
Yeah, those guys, they had like 3 or 4
Grand Prix of Monaco cars.
Yeah, they had like 3 or 4 different cars that he made just for those races, and that was the team to beat there for the longest time. Ford finally did it, right?
I guess so. I guess so.
I had one for you. I don't know if you'll think it's as big as your 3, but let's go with this one and see if anybody can tell me whose birthday this is. And it's not going to be the band who I'm playing it.
Yes, sir. That is as big as one of the 3 I had on my list right here.
Okay, good. Well, I didn't mess up that.
70 years old today, Johnny Travolta.
Mm-hmm.
Born in 1954. Wait, would that not make him 71?
Your math is better than mine this early.
I don't know if it is. I don't know if it is. John Travolta.
Yeah, that's
best John Travolta movie.
I don't know. I like Urban Cowboy, some of the early one. It's a really good flick, and you got Glenn in it and Deborah Winger. It's just a really good movie. I think it's got a lot of layers to it. It's probably one of my favorites. So
I thought you might go Pulp Fiction.
That's a good one. It's just a little later. He came back after the addictions and all the issues, and I think that's an amazing movie and a great comeback. So, yeah, two different eras of Travolta. I think that would probably be my favorite in the second era, the second coming of John.
And yet, I probably would go to Grease.
Grease, that's a classic. You're a musical guy, though, so,
Oh, shut up.
You like the musical. Hey, there's another big one. I don't know if there's somebody tell me who this one is.
Toss-up is worth $1,000. Category is phrase, and
man, it was so weird. We went to dinner Friday night, took the kids. We were at a hibachi place, and I look up, and they've got the TV on the wall, and I'm like, Ryan Seacrest is hosting Wheel of Fortune.
Right.
Somehow I forgot that. Yeah, Pat Sajak birthday today, huh?
No, Vanna White, actually, yeah. Yeah, I had to do that one. Yeah, she was just spinning the letters, right? She never spoke, so
that's right.
It was just Vanna White.
Dr. Dre, 59 years old today as well, born in 1965. Good to be with you this morning. Just getting started. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi. The C Spire text line is open to you, 601-879-4395. Got some news headlines for you when we come back. Thanks for joining us on this Tuesday morning.
Pour yourself a cup of coffee and get the Magnolia State's most important news of the day. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Tuesday morning. Thanks for being with us. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi. A Delta Airlines jet flipped on its roof while landing at Toronto's Pearson Airport yesterday. Media immediately blamed Trump's FAA layoffs for the fact that wind flipped a jet after landing on a runway. All 80 people on board survived, and those hurt had relatively minor injuries. That's according to the airport chief executive. Snow was being blown by winds gusting at 40 miles per hour when the flight from Minneapolis, carrying 76 passengers and 4 crew members, attempted to land on a dry runway. About 2:15 yesterday afternoon, authorities said the cause of the crash remained under investigation. Video posted to various social media accounts only show the aftermath of the CRJ 900, which was overturned. Fuselage, so the body of the plane, seemingly intact, but apparently missing a wing. And firefighters dousing what was left of the fires. Passengers climbed out and they walked across the tarmac. Lance, you see some of the pictures from this deal in Toronto?
It's wild, isn't it? I mean, I can't. It's hard to comprehend that an airplane can actually flip over and land on its lid like that, missing a wing, and then people, only 8, I think there was 8 injured.
Yeah.
None were life-threatening. And then you blame Trump for the wind. I mean, it's just bizarre. I mean, the whole thing.
I mean, it really was amazing. And I don't mean amazing in like, oh, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Like if you take the actual definition of the word amazing, to hear the pretzel that people twisted their brains into online and in the news media to immediately point out that since Donald Trump became president, there have been this many plane incidents. If you're keeping score at home, there have been 4. 4th major aviation mishap in North America in the past month. There was obviously the tragic collision of the Army helicopter and the plane in D.C. That was on January 29th, killed 67 people. There was a medical transportation plane that crashed in Philadelphia 2 days later, January 31st. That was a tragic story. It was there was a mother and a couple of doctors on there and a child who had been going through medical procedures, and they were transporting her. And the plane went down. It had that fireball in the sky in Philadelphia. And then there was the plane that killed 6 people on board, another person on the ground. That was in the medvac flight. And then there were 10 people that were killed in a plane crash in Alaska. Individually, all of these are tragic. Very tragic. Loss of life. Major concerns about the crash at Reagan in D.C. And the major concerns, I think, are less related to air traffic control personnel. I'm not saying that's not an issue. I think there's a staffing issue in one of the most stressful jobs that exists in the entire world. And it's been at the top of those lists over and over and over. Those people are paid very, very well because, Lance, we come in, get our coffee, hang out, visit, make sure we're on the same page, connect our video feed, connect the audio feeds, make a run to the restroom. Then we start talking. We talk for 10 or 12 minutes, and then we take a break, and we talk for... There are no breaks. When you go on the clock as an air traffic controller, you are locked in. You have to be. From the second you clock in until the second your shift ends. Because all those little dots on the screen represent hundreds, if not thousands, of people whose lives are in your hands for getting them to arrive safely. There is a staffing issue. There is a stress issue related to that. But I don't think that's the biggest concern related to the crash in Washington, D.C. It's the airspace around Reagan National Airport that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a mess.
There's too much going on there. Very clearly a tragedy. But a small plane goes down in Alaska when flying in a snowstorm trying to cover part of the Bering Sea. While tragic, that's not related to FAA staffing issues. That's not related to any cuts that may or may not be made within the FAA bureaucracy. And then the Philadelphia flight, just a tragedy. And then yesterday, a wind gust and unstable air in low levels of the atmosphere apparently causing a plane to flip on the runway as it was landing. And thankfully, nobody was hurt. But Pete Buttigieg, we had no issues. Yeah. You kind of laid the groundwork for the situation that you're in right now. When does the carryover stop? Right? People want to say, well, Trump said he was going to bring down prices. Yeah, but you got some inflation stuff going on right now. And it's inflation that was put in place with policies over the last 4 years. But in 4 weeks, it's supposed to be fixed, right? Genuine question. And I've been pondering this for the last, I went to bed thinking about it last night and woke up this morning thinking about it. Are the people who are trying to shove this down your throat dumb, or do they think you're dumb? Which is it? Do they think that you, a consumer of news and information and just a person living your life, try to do the best you can for your family, do they think you are stupid? Like too stupid to be able to delineate between facts and fiction, or are they themselves that stupid that they can't delineate? Or just nefarious? Scary scenes from the state of Kentucky. Officials are still in search and rescue mode after heavy rain caused deadly widespread flooding across Kentucky over the weekend. Governor Andy Beshear said this is one of the most serious weather events we've dealt with in at least a decade. There were more than 1,000 water rescues that have already occurred. Andy Beshear says at least 12 people have died due to the historic storm, and bad news for Kentucky. In just a second, Lance, let's play this clip from Andy Beshear. I thought really good stuff from him. There's another winter storm that's on the way. It's going to started hitting the United States yesterday, bringing snow to Kentucky. And winter alerts are in place for 34 million people from the Central Plains all the way to West Virginia. Storm moved across the Rockies yesterday, began producing snow across the Central Plains. Going to bring moderate to heavy snow in Kansas, Missouri, Oklahoma, and Arkansas today. A strip of ice is possible from northern Texas all the way to Arkansas. And later today, the storm is expected to bring snow to Kentucky. You got a lot of people that are displaced by the flooding that are now going to have to deal with Arctic temperatures. This storm is going to move off the coast by Thursday. So Andy Beshear, who is a Democrat governor in Kentucky, yesterday was on CNN, and he actually had really good things to say about this administration.
I do want to thank Secretary Noem and the President who have responded to all of our requests, turned around the declaration of emergency about as quickly as I've ever seen. FEMA is with us here in the EOC, and they brought in resources, extra search and rescue teams. So really grateful for how they're operating with us.
So along the lines of, do they think you're dumb or are you dumb? Andy Beshear doesn't fall into that category right now. He just shoots straight with you. The administration has done everything they could. They've turned things around as quickly as they possibly could to get the relief that is needed for the people of Kentucky in their time of need. And you know what's important to remember here? Like, genuinely important to remember. When you hear the people saying, well, they want to dismantle FEMA, that does not mean that the federal government is dismantling aid to the states in the wake of natural disasters. It's not what it means. It means they are looking at recalibrating the bureaucracy of a massive federal agency that is responsible for billions and billions and billions of dollars. How about contrasting the way that the federal government responded to the flooding in Kentucky to the way that the federal government responded to the flooding in North Carolina just a few months ago? One more headline for you. State employees could get up to 8 weeks of paid maternity leave under a bill that the House passed unanimously last week. Now heads over to the Senate. Currently, government employees in Mississippi must forego pay if they decide to take time off after the birth or adoption of a child. Representative Kevin Felsher, a Republican from Biloxi, is the author of House Bill 1063, said it would also give 2 weeks of paid leave to the child's father or secondary caregiver. The law would apply to birth as well as adoption. It would not, however, apply to public school teachers. Policy garnered broad support this year across party lines and chambers. There's a similar bill in the Senate that was authored by Senator Jeremy England. Lynn Fitch has voiced her support for the bill as well. Back with you on Mornings after this.
Shaping Mississippi politics each morning. Mornings with Richard Cross. Super Talk Mississippi.
You were the first thing that I thought of when I thought I drank you off my mind. And I get lost in the liquor.
Mornings with Richard Cross. Thanks for being with us on Super Talk Mississippi on this 18th day of February. Alongside Lance Talbert, I'm Richard Cross. Thanks for joining us. Are you intrigued, Lance, by the sudden conversation about Fort Knox?
Ooh, yeah, gold. I always like that. I had several posts pulled off of Facebook back in the day for, gold supply comments. So, yeah, anytime you start talking about Fort Knox, I'm in.
Wait, you were censored by Facebook?
Yeah, direct message, too, not actually on a wall, but between clients. So, yeah, it was 3 times. I kind of decided I didn't like using Facebook if they wouldn't allow me to talk about gold. But, yeah, I'm always fascinated with gold because it's got so many layers to it. Not just as an investment, but, the history and the conspiracies and all the treasure. And then you got Fort Knox, which is an unbelievable story within itself.
It is the repository for gold in the United States, located in Kentucky. And Fort Knox is one of the government entities that is in the sights of Doge. Apparently, there has not been an audit of Fort Knox and the gold reserves for the United States, the actual physical gold bar, gold coin reserves, since sometime in the 1970s.
70s, yeah.
Nobody has actually done an accounting of the gold. That's a story that is going to be fascinating to continue to watch. Is the gold where they say the gold is? Do we know exactly how much gold is there? And what's the worth of gold? And Donald Trump mentioning that maybe we need to go back to the gold standard. You know, we're only going to print money that can be backed up by the value of gold that's behind it. We've gotten way away from the gold standard.
Well, that and gold itself, it's in the way that the government holds it. You don't really know because they haven't really. We talked about that last week. The potential for the U.S. government to revalue the holdings of gold, where they were holding it at about $44.50 an ounce. Well, obviously, gold's much higher price now than it was when the baseline was accounted for. So, how would that change anything? Given you're dealing with a 2,000 or much higher value for gold there. So you can't go sell the gold. And one of the interesting things about gold is in many cases you really don't physically hold it. You own the certificate or you own the right to it, just like you do with oil. I mean, you don't want a bunch of barrels of oil sitting over here. You want the right to own it if things go the way you want them to. So it will be a fascinating story.
I think I might actually like holding the actual physical gold. You got your gun safe at the house. If you had a couple of gold bars tucked away in there, it feels like that would be kind of cool.
It'd be a nice hedge. But again, that's one of the risks is what do you do with it when you have it? If somebody comes and wants to steal it. But a lot of people do hold gold. But as far as governments go, who knows what they really have? I remember years ago when Germany wanted their gold back from us that we were holding for them. And we went, well, we can't give it to you. And Germany's like, well, we want our gold. And America's like, well, too bad. That was, So, whether you had it or not.
How big a boy are you?
Exactly. So it is very interesting. How much has actually been mined since history is one of those pieces of that equation, too. I always find fascinating because most of your mined gold is only accounting for most of your developed countries on the planet since the beginning of keeping up with it. But you don't account for gold that was pulled out of, say, China 3,000 years ago. So it's interesting. What is actually in the supply and what is being held in accounts in places that it's not ever going to be allowed to come out.
Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who obviously is in the place where Fort Knox exists, invited Elon Musk and the Doge team to review the gold reserves. He did that via X over the weekend and wanted to discuss the need for greater transparency about the massive reserve after trying to verify it himself for a decade. Mike Lee is another senator and said, I have asked to go to Fort Knox. And I was told, no, you can't go there. It's a military installation. He said, I'm a U.S. senator. I go to military installations all the time. And they said, not this one. Rand Paul said, I think some of them may not think it needs to be audited all the time, but I think the more sunlight, the better. More transparency, the better. And also, it brings attention to the fact that gold still has value and implicitly, not explicitly, but implicitly, gold still gives value to the dollar. That's what Rand Paul told Lawrence Jones on Fox and Friends Monday morning. Then he said, that's why we don't get rid of it. We've got it. The IMF has it. The World Bank has it. Most of the central banks around the world have gold, and it's an implicit trust that the dollar still has some backing. The United States has the world's largest gold reserve, reportedly with more than 8,100 tons of it at the end of 2024. The massive reserve of gold at Fort Knox has been valued reportedly at $425 billion, though there are a lot of people that think it's actually worth a whole lot more than that. I don't know. It feels like stories about pirates and treasure and all of those things kind of roll into the fascination of gold.
Oh, yeah. There's some great stories. Yamashita's gold, the Golden Lily treasure. If folks haven't ever kind of looked into those, it was, World War II era. But what happened to all the gold after World War II?
3 basketball games tonight in the SEC, 6 o'clock on ESPN2. Oklahoma visits Florida. Florida ranked number 2 in the country. Florida a big favorite in that ball game tonight. 8 o'clock on the SEC Network, South Carolina is in Baton Rouge to take on LSU. LSU coming off a win on the road against Oklahoma. South Carolina 0-12 in the SEC. LSU a small favorite in that ball game. And fresh off a rivalry win over Ole Miss, Mississippi State back home at Humphrey Coliseum tonight, hosting red-hot Texas A&M. The Aggies have won 5 straight and 6 of their last 7 in SEC basketball. It's a top 25 matchup in Starkville tonight with Texas A&M coming in at number 7 in the country. They are 9-3 in the SEC. Mississippi State 6-6 in conference games. Bulldogs are a 2.5-point favorite in that ball game that tips off tonight at 6 o'clock, and the game is on the SEC network. You've got the new AP Top 25 out. Alabama and Auburn played in a 1-2 game this past weekend. Auburn is the number 1 team in the country at 23-2, followed by Florida, also from the SEC. You've got Alabama checking in at number 4, Tennessee at 6, Texas A&M at 7, Missouri, who last year was in the position that South Carolina is in this year, winless in the SEC. They went 0-18 in conference play a year ago. They're 19-6 this year and are currently ranked 15th in the country. Kentucky is number 17, Mississippi State number 21, and Ole Miss staying in the top 25 after their loss last week to Mississippi State. They check in at number 24. Ole Miss has the midweek off. It's their only open date on the schedule this year, and they, or at least in conference play, they'll get back to it on Saturday in Nashville, taking on the Vanderbilt Commodores. You got baseball today. We talked about this yesterday and mentioned it earlier this morning. Mississippi State traveling to Hattiesburg to take on Southern Miss. Yesterday on Sports Talk Mississippi, both Christian Ostrander and Chris Lamonis were on the show, and they talked a little bit about the matchup. This is price of poker going up just 4 or 5 games into the season. Southern Miss went 4-0 with a sweep of Lafayette over the weekend. Mississippi State swept Manhattan. That game 6 o'clock tonight. Looks like temperatures are going to be in the 50s for what should be a great crowd tonight at Pete Taylor Park in Hattiesburg. And a time change for Arkansas State and Ole Miss. Game that was originally scheduled to begin at 4 o'clock has been moved up to 2 o'clock. I think they said that had something to do with travel issues or arrangements for Arkansas State. Maybe it had something to do with the cold as well, as it's going to be in the 40s when that game starts, and as it gets closer to dark, it is going to get cold tonight in Oxford. So Arkansas State and Ole Miss coming at 2 o'clock this afternoon. You will get that game locally on the Oxford SuperTalk Mississippi radio station. Rebels winning 2 out of 3 over the weekend down in Arlington, Texas. A couple of ranked wins over Arizona and Clemson. They lost to Texas this weekend. So that's your baseball action. Man, there's so many people that love college baseball here in Mississippi and really anticipate the start of the season. You know, we get into football season and it goes by in a hurry, right? I mean, you count down to the start of the football season, you get to that last weekend of August, first week of September, and you blink, and you're into November, and you're playing rivalry games, and it's like, man, where did it go? Basketball it kind of feels like it drags a little bit, right? You get into February, and if you're playing meaningful games, it's a whole lot of fun, but it feels like the basketball season lasts for a long time. Baseball, once it starts, I mean, you're 4 or 5 games a week, and it's boom, 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 boom. It comes at you fast, and we are off and running with the college baseball season. You remember that routine when you were playing, Lance, where it's all right, we waited for the start of the year, we're tired of playing ourselves, and then the season starts, and it's like, it feels like you're playing a game every day. Yeah, and then 2 weeks later, you better have won some games, or that you would have wished that the season was 2 weeks further out and you had more practice. Just a little bit more behind time. You quick, comes at you fast. We'll get your Mississippi Lottery update coming up next. A reminder that Speaker of the House Jason White will join us coming up at 7:20, about half an hour from right now. And also Dan Stein from the Federation for American Immigration Reform. He'll be along in the 8 o'clock hour. You've got it locked into Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi. We're back with you after this.
With Richard Cross, here on Super Talk Mississippi.
What else?
And always on the Super Talk app.
C-Spire text line is open to you. Whether you're looking for the best in wireless, C-Spire's got 5G nationwide coverage, the best in home internet with fiber to the home, gigabit fiber speeds coming into your home, or the best in business IT services. C-Spire can help your business run its best. C-Spire's got you covered. C-Spire, customer inspired. 601-879-4395. That's the number if you want to join us and be a part of the conversation this morning. Jeff says, am I crazy for thinking about getting a smoothie for breakfast this morning when it's just over 30 degrees?
No.
Absolutely not. You do you for breakfast. Like, whatever it is that makes you go in the morning, you got to get it.
There's something about having a nice frap or something like that on a cold day. Throw yourself off.
Need fruit in that smoothie.
I need like 8 shots of espresso.
Well, that's a coffee drink. That's not a smoothie.
That's what I'm saying. I can't do the fruit that early. I'll do my grapefruit juice, but I've got to have some espresso or some Major League coffee this early.
I crushed a sausage, egg, and cheese biscuit and 2 banana muffins this morning.
Nice.
Oh, so good. So good.
You're fueled up, ready to go.
Ready to go. Ready to give you an update from the Mississippi Lottery, mslottery.com. That is their website. You can check out everything that is happening there. Lotto America, no jackpot winner. Our estimated drawing for tomorrow, $24,190,000. Estimated cash value for that, little over $11 million. Yesterday's numbers from the Lotto America drawing, 20, 22, 24, 37, 48. Star Ball was 5, and the All-Star bonus multiplier was 4. We did not have a jackpot winner on Monday, yesterday, for Powerball. And so the Powerball jackpot getting on up there, $195 million in your pocket. Cash value, $90 million before taxes. Numbers for yesterday's drawing on the Powerball, 4, 44, 47, 52, 57. The Powerball was 9, and the Power Play multiplier was 4.
Double play numbers from the Monday, February 17th drawing, 17, 18, 49, 56, 59, Powerball of 8. And there's no jackpot winner yet on the Mega Millions. It's up to $145 million for tonight's drawing, Tuesday, February the 18th. And you can take home $66.3 million if you win it. Numbers from the Friday drawing, 11, 19, 31, 49, 56, Mega Ball of 16, and a Megaplier multiplier of 3.
No jackpot winner on Mississippi Match 5. Tonight's drawing is worth $100,000. Yesterday's numbers, 15, 17, 23, 27, and 35. Yesterday, on the Cash 3 midday $500 drawing, 469. The evening numbers, 369. Cash 4 $5,000 drawing, 8161 in the midday. 1091 in the evening. The Fireball for the midday drawing was 5. For the evening drawing, it was 9. Cash Pop 10 and 13, respectively. Those are your numbers for Cash 3 and Cash 4. There is a new promotion going on with the Mississippi Lottery. It's the Pink Panther Diamond Tripler Bonus Promotion. I'd love to be in the marketing meetings when they are coming up with the names for these contests. The Pink Panther Diamond Tripler Bonus Promotion. It's a $5 scratch-off, and it's your shot at a top prize of $100,000. That's not all. With the lottery's brand-new bonus promotion, you can enter your non-winning tickets into the Mississippi Lottery Second Chance portal for another chance at $100,000 after the game ends, and a chance to win bonus prizes from $100 gift cards all the way up to $15,000 in cash. The first 8 bonus drawings happen this Thursday, February 20th. Stay tuned for the announcement of winner cities, and for all the details, you can visit mslottery.com. Click on the bonus promos tab to learn all of the rules and regulations and how you can win. How about some winners?
And Cash 4 winners, a Greenville man with $800 in the pocket from Cindy's Food Market in Greenville. A Flowwood player won $2,700 on a ticket from Fleetway 107 in Flowwood.
Very good. Cash Pop. You had a Jackson woman win $1,000 on a ticket from Keith Superstore in Bay Springs. An Oxford woman, $1,000 on a ticket from Walmart Superstore in Oxford. A Brandon man, $1,250 on a ticket from Lakeside Food Mart in Brandon. A Vicksburg man won $1,250 on a ticket from Food Max in Vicksburg. And a Hermanville woman, $2,500 on a ticket from Port Gibson Corner in Port Gibson.
Lotto America winner, $3,000 from a Mobile, Alabama man. Purchased at Keith Superstore 86 in Moss Point. And then the big winner for the day, the Mega Millions winner, a Forest man, won $30,000 on a ticket from the Mini Food Mart in Forest.
That's good. Match 5 winners. New Hebron woman, $800 on a ticket from Taylorsville Chevron. Equipment man, $810 on a ticket from Minute Mart Equipment. There was a $5 big money bingo winner, Lucedale man, $5,000 on a ticket from Keith Superstore in Moss Point. Tylertown man won $3,000 on a ticket from Mississippi Holmesville Grocery in Macomb, and had a couple of winners, one in Tupelo, one in Louisville, $1,000 each on the 200X Cash Blitz $20 scratch-off. Gene in Mendenhall, does anyone even know who the Pink Panther is?
That's Peter Sellers, right?
Dun 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 dun. Keith in Monticello says, smoothie on a biscuit, I guess. Yes, some people, Keith, call that gravy. You want to call it a smoothie? You do you. Quick time out. Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi. 7 o'clock hour is next, but first, you got the news.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, and callers on this show are not the opinions of TeleSouth Communications, its management, or advertisers.
When it comes to faith, family, and flag, no other media audience is more committed and more involved. This is where the change makers gather every morning. The Gallo Radio Show on SuperTalk Mississippi, the SuperTalk app, and at supertalk.fm.
About night things in the middle of the afternoon, and every night you make my daydreams come true.
This hour of Mornings with Richard Cross is brought to you by MWG Employer Services. Running a business is tough, and if you're struggling with HR, benefits, and payroll, you are not alone. Nobody loves doing that, but MWG Employer Services, not only do they do it well. It's where they come in to help you. They can provide a full range of employer services, plus a custom plan that fits you. Give them a call today, 601-206-7966. That's 601-206-7966. Or go to MWGEmployerServices.com. Quickly want to tell you about my friends at Genteel. If you're not familiar with Genteel, a Mississippi-based company. They were started in North Mississippi about a decade ago and have just continued to grow and put out great apparel for men. GenteelApparel.com is the website. You can find them at men's specialty stores all across the country, certainly all across the Southeast. Their new spring apparel is online. You can see some of the new outerwear that they've got, whether it's lightweight hoodies or quarter zips, or the new shirts that have come in for the spring. Check them out. They've also got the collegiate collection. So whether you're a fan of Mississippi State, Ole Miss, or Southern Miss, you can look your best headed to the ballpark this spring and summer with Genteel. GenteelApparel.com. Richard Cross, Lance Talbert with you. I think this story is remarkable. It's almost as if the way the United States is being portrayed primarily by the media on the world stage isn't exactly true. Over the course of the weekend, you got a flurry of stories and posts and opinions and sound bites from news shows about what's going on in Europe with the European Union, reaction to the J.D. Vance speech at the Munich Security Conference in Germany, his kind of overall synopsis of, Europe used to be a place that championed free speech, but it has become a place that is oppressive. You got the 60 Minutes piece where, it was like 10 minutes long. They interviewed 4 or 5 different people, all supportive of not only the suppression of free speech, but the arrest of people for making posts online that were untrue or that were deemed hate speech. And So the backdrop of all of that, you have that going on in Europe, and a larger point where J.D. Vance is kind of saying, and frankly speaking for the president, Europe's got to pull its weight from a defense standpoint. The United States has been propping up NATO for far too long, and if you want us to be involved, you're going to have to do your part. And then Trump, who's working toward the end of the Ukraine-Russia war, and all of the, Pete Hegseth has already given away too much in negotiations just by what he has said publicly. And the United States is giving Russia a win. So you got all of this going on. And then you have somebody that's actually involved with the situation come out and says a lot of things that are really counter to the narrative that you saw being pushed in the legacy media, in the mainstream media. Mark Rutte is the Secretary General of NATO. And he said that European countries in the military alliance of NATO have agreed to step up their defense spending in the wake of President Donald Trump's request that they increase the number to 5% GDP. GDP, gross domestic product, the amount of money that a nation generates based on all of the things that it produces. Right now, most of the European countries are about 2%. So Rutte says, right now, we are spending $700 billion more on the European side of NATO than before President Trump came into office. All right, put that in perspective just a second ago, right? We've heard Trump's not doing this, Trump's not doing that. He said he was going to bring the price of eggs down, and the price of eggs have gone up. You want to see tangible evidence of something changing in 4 weeks? There you go. Right now, we are spending $700 billion more on the European side of NATO than before President Trump came into office. Today's day 29 of the new administration. Rutte goes on to say, though, it is absolutely still not enough. We have to do much, much more. And then, what about the relationship with the United States? The U.S. is by far the most important ally within NATO. But the U.S. is absolutely right that it is only fair that on the European side of NATO, we ramp up spending because we need to do it for our own defense, but also because it is fair to get this balance with what the U.S. is spending on defense. Now, yesterday we talked a little about the fact that Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, hosted an emergency summit in Paris to discuss an upcoming bilateral meeting between U.S. and Russian officials in Saudi Arabia. That happened yesterday, to negotiate an end to the Russia-Ukraine war. Alarm bells went off, the story reads, in Europe after Pete Hegseth said last week that NATO membership for Ukraine is an unrealistic outcome for any negotiated settlement to the war, and security guarantees must be maintained by capable European and non-European troops. Another quote from the Secretary General of NATO. We have to work to make sure that we keep the whole of NATO territory safe, but clearly we have to step up on this part, and when it comes to other theaters, the other areas in the world where the U.S. has to concentrate its attention on, obviously China, of course, the Middle East, it's only fair that you ask the Europeans to do more so that they can be able to make sure that they can have their attention concentrating on all these areas, including Europe. So who is this guy? Mark Rutte, Secretary General. He's the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands. And he rejected the idea that Trump is appeasing Vladimir Putin ahead of the actual talks. What did he say? What the American president is doing, he wants to bring this war to an end. He has taken initiatives to do that. That whole process is now starting. And Europeans were a bit rattled when that started and started to complain that they were not involved. They're now stepping up. They're getting their act together, wanting to participate. That's a different spin. It's not even a spin. That's a different version of what we have heard is happening in Europe. a different version than what we have heard is happening with Russia and Ukraine. And this is not Piers Morgan. This is not AOC telling you what's going on. This is not Chris Murphy from Connecticut telling you that the United States is crumbling and our place on the global stage has become a laughingstock. No, the United States has been a laughingstock with its place on the world stage for the last 4 years under Joe Biden's leadership. And it was a laughingstock, not like ooh ha ha. It was a laughingstock because other countries believed that they could push the United States around. And it may be a little uncomfortable right now because you feel like, oh, they're talking tough. I think the difference is this isn't tough talk. This isn't idle threats. This isn't one of Lance's favorite sayings, saber rattling. This is real from the President of the United States. It's real from the Vice President of the United States. It's real from the Secretary of Defense of the United States. It's real from the Secretary of State for the United States, Marco Rubio, who's engaging in these preliminary talks with Russia. This is real. And if you want evidence that it's real, go to the leader of NATO in Europe, the Secretary General of NATO, who goes, you know, Trump's only been in office for 4 weeks, and we've already ramped up the money that we're spending. We're up $700 million in Europe, but that's not nearly enough. And the characterization that there's appeasement going on between the United States and Russia to bring an end to this war, it's not true. The President of the United States said that he was going to bring this war to an end, and he has begun taking the steps necessary to do that. Yes, diplomacy will involve. Yes, there probably will be some concessions that are there. But if you think Russia's just going to completely skate on this deal, you're so incredibly naive. You got stuff actually happening and a little bit of a peek behind the curtain as to how it's going, as opposed to how some of the media that wants to make you hate Donald Trump is telling you how it's happening. Speaker of the House, Jason White, joins us next. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
From the Mississippi. Start your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
And I'm tired of taking blame when I ain't done nothing wrong. I'm tired of other people trying to take what's mine. And I'm tired of y'all playing dress up and trying to sing them old country songs.
Good morning. Thanks for being with us. Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk, Mississippi. Love for you to join the conversation, whether you agree or disagree. Want to hear from you. 601-879-4395. That's the number for the C Spire text line. We are joined this morning by the Speaker of the House and the Mississippi Legislature. Jason White joins us. Good morning, my friend. How are you today?
I'm good, Richard. Good morning. Good to be with you. It's not many political talk shows you come on where Sturgill Simpson's the lead in, but I got to give Lance some props over there. He's bringing it strong this morning.
I mean,
on a Tuesday morning.
How good is that at 20 minutes after 7 on a Tuesday morning?
And that was just for him, too.
You ain't lying. It's outstanding.
Beautiful. Maybe you could get a little soundtrack going on while you got stuff going on the floor, just a little bed of music to kind of keep things moving along in the house.
Well, the next song will be even better, and he knows what's coming.
Paul used to reminisce a little bit. He used to like to play, when we get here and talk about infrastructure, he would always play Miranda Lambert, My Little Red Wagon, and it was really good. He could get to that good part of the song. He'd always lead in with that. It was good.
Did we roll with that yesterday, Lance?
I can't remember what we were
I don't think we did.
I don't even remember yesterday.
We were talking MDOT yesterday. Maybe that was a good time for...
I think he said the wheels are broken, the axle's dragging.
There you go. Certainly always good to be with you. So much going on in the legislature. I think we are actually in a week with no deadlines, which has not been the norm over the last couple of weeks, and I know that they're coming again. But, I mean, we'd be burying the lead if we just didn't start with the tax reform conversation. You and the governor and the legislature, or the House, laid out pretty clearly right out of the gate. House Bill 1. We've talked with you about the Build Up Mississippi Act. Took a while to get a bill from the Senate, but we have that, and now people are kind of in the compare and contrast mode and wondering what this looks like over the days to come. So let's start there. Your reaction to the bill that came from the Senate in terms of tax reform, because there are very key differences.
There are key differences, but I have to point out one key thing right out of the chute, Richard, and that is you're talking about the bill that came from the Senate. We actually don't have a bill from the Senate. Not only do we not have one passed by the Senate, we don't have a bill dropped in the Senate. So words on paper matter, and we hadn't seen their bill yet. And as a matter of fact, senators have not seen their bill yet. So it's only concept and on a poster board. I'm not being critical of that. You got to talk about it and get it out there. And we did the same thing before we dropped our bill. I'm just saying, to this point, we don't have a Senate bill. Now, I'll take them at their word in their 3-point plan of cutting income tax from 4 to 3, dropping the grocery tax from 7 to 5, and then phasing in a gas excise tax increase of 9 cents, 3 cents a year over 3 years, and then indexing afterwards. Those are good pieces. Nobody's out saying the Senate's bad for that being their first stab at a tax cut. But I do have to point out, and there is a little bit of a track record of folks down there talking about something, and then when the bill comes out, it looks totally different. So I do have to say, with some degree of caution, that's what they've said. The lieutenant governor was saying something different a month ago. Now this is this. We'll see what the bill says, and we'll see what they actually pass in the Senate, because I know there are some senators down there who are not crazy about raising any tax if it doesn't include an elimination of the personal income tax, even over a lengthy period of time. So that may be a sticky. Bill's coming? That may be, brother. If you could predict that, we would. You wouldn't be on SuperTalk, and I wouldn't be here with you. We'd be doing something much different. Probably pretty quick. I don't know. I mean, they've had a press conference and an unveiling of an idea. I'm sure a bill is forthcoming. I'm just saying it hadn't hit the computer even as of 5 minutes ago. I was looking before I came in, because all of my people are anxious to look at it, because there was some talk about whether or not they kept cities whole in their grocery tax cut, because as you know, that is a major revenue producer for cities in the way they collect taxes and fund their local governments. If you're going to cut the grocery tax, that's great. We need to do that. We have the highest in the country, but our cities obtain most of their sales tax revenue from grocery tax sales or tax on food. So the House plan,
and that was made up in the House bill with the additional 1.5% on sales tax, right?
Well, there was an additional 1.5% sales tax across the board. But even as we cut grocery tax down to 4% over a longer period of time than they do, we cut it 1% the first year and then cut it another 2% over a longer period of time. But we keep the cities, they get a full 1.5 cents even on groceries in our plan. We don't reduce them. We just totally absorb that on the state side. And so there was some talk about how the Senate plan would do that, because there wasn't a lot of detail about that. So those are smart guys over there. I'm not taking anything away from them. They'll figure that part out. I'm just telling you, it's a main sticking point right out of the chute that their bill doesn't call for the elimination of the income tax, and it requires us going back, passing more legislation, and whatever way the political winds are blowing on that particular day will determine that.
So the gas tax piece of it is fascinating to me. Forgive me for using the same example over and over, but I feel like it's important for people to hear. The 5% sales tax, if you will, on gas, at its most simple, you go to the gas pump, you spend $100 on a tank of gas, your bill is going to be $105, a 5% tax on the $100 that you spent, whereas on the Senate side with the excise tax, that is baked into the cost that you pay at the pump already. So if you're paying $2.68 a gallon for gas, there is a new 9-cent excise tax that goes to the state that is part of the cost that you already pay. So why the sales tax on gas versus an excise tax like the Senate has in their plan? And I guess I asked that with the backdrop of, it seems to me that the excise tax would make it easier for budgeting purposes going forward But as opposed to the sales tax that would go up and down as the price of gas goes up and down.
Well, I think that's the main feature of a sales tax is it tracks the price of gas, whereas their plan, if you will, as you say, it's baked in. I think even if it was, if ultimately it was decided that a sales tax was the way to go, and that was the legislation that turned into law, you're still going to, if you're at the pump and you're pumping gas, it's going to click on $100, and that's going to have all of that probably baked in already. The states that do have a sales tax do it that way, but regardless of that, we don't.
So it's not a deal where you're going to pay $100 and then they're going to hand you the receipt and you owe $105.
Correct.
They will have put that 5% into the cost of a gallon of gas, and when you get to the final number, it's going to be the final number.
Right, but regardless of that, the House is not hung up on it has to be a sales tax. We're fine with excise tax. Now some folks do not want an index, and theirs has an index. I personally have thought from day one we should have had an index on our gas, and we wouldn't be in the position we are in today where we're trying to fund 2025 roads on a 1987 expense of 18 cents a gallon. So that part is won't be a sticking point. Whether we can go with excise tax and an index over sales tax. Nobody's hung up about that. Nobody's hung up about phasing in the increase in the gas tax. That probably makes sense. That's not now we have real needs at MDOT today, not 3 years from now. So we'll have to figure that out. But we got money in the bank. We can, luckily we've got almost $3 billion sitting in the bank account that is not obligated. That can be spent on infrastructure. So we can do an immediate cash infusion and phase in the step up of an excise tax. That part's not a hang up. What the Senate knows is a hang up with the governor and with most of my House colleagues is not eliminating the personal income tax. And so a lot of people think it's a poison pill right from the get-go. It's a safe political bet to throw that plan out there knowing it's not going to be, while it is a serious plan, it's not going to be taken serious because everybody within 5 miles of the Capitol knows the governor has already weighed in early and often on the fact that he's not crazy about raising sales tax or gas tax, but he's willing to go there if it's a $1 billion tax cut to Mississippians, and that's what House Bill 1 does. The other big thing, if we take them at their word on their 3-point plan, is they've done nothing for local governments who are faced with some of the same issues that we are faced with in state government. They have asked forever for some form of increased revenue because guess what? If you don't allow them some increased revenue in the form of sales tax, guess where they go to get that money? Your property taxes. Cities and counties both. It's the only other mechanism they have, and for counties, it's really the only mechanism they have. So we are trying to keep those property taxes down too, and part of that was allowing with this new cent and a half. Now they receive cities receive about 1.26, 1.28. They would receive 1.5. It's almost a 20% increase in the diversion to them.
And we talked about that a few weeks ago.
That's real money. And I heard somebody ask the lieutenant governor, "What about the cities?" He said, "Cities are going to be fine." Well, I can talk to Robin Tannehill in Oxford and find out if she's going to be fine. I'll let her speak for herself on it.
And one of the things we talked about with Trey Lamar a few weeks ago was kind of looking at the real numbers in the plan and showing that cities were actually going to come out ahead across the board with this plan.
Sure.
We got more coming up with Speaker of the House, Jason White. Quick timeout. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi. Revenue and expenses. That's kind of what this all comes down to if it's going to work in the long run. We'll pick it up there when we come back.
Blue Ribbon Beer.
From Sumner to Summit to Summerall, Richard has something for you. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi.
Oh, but it looks like I'm going to live now. I go to the House of Representatives and they vote on me.
If they vote yes, what happens?
Then I go to the Senate and the whole thing starts all over again.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. I'm just a bill. Yes, I'm only a bill. And if they vote for me on Capitol Hill, well, then I'm off to the White House.
Back with you on Super Talk Mississippi. This is Mornings with Richard Cross. Jason White, Speaker of the House, is my guest on this Tuesday morning. Glad to be with you. We'll go to the revenue and expenses thing in just a second, but I will forgive you if you say, hey, I'm not going to negotiate against something that doesn't exist, in so much as the Senate bill does not actually exist yet. Is there a compromise to be made short of full elimination of the personal income tax?
You never say never, Richard. And you're right. It's tough to negotiate against yourself when there's no product to hold up and compare and contrast. It is a main sticking point for the House. It is a strong position when every House Republican, not all but 5, not all but 3, or not all but 10, every House Republican voted for House Bill 1. And that wasn't after arm twisting or cajoling or talking or this or that. It was where my people are, and so that's going to be a hard position for my people to retreat from. Now, when you couple that strong position from the House with the fact that the governor has said he's not for raising these other taxes if you're not eliminating the personal income tax. Now, all right, now you got two things. Now that's two things you got to consider. So there's no denying we need to do something with our infrastructure, with our roads and bridges, and the way we fund MDOT. This is the time to do that. Republican supermajorities exist in both the House and Senate. It's time we are adults and figure out a way to fund those things that are priorities for every Mississippian, not even just Republicans, but every Mississippian. And we can do that as part of this bill. If you're not eliminating the personal income tax, you've got one of the branches of government that has said, I'm not all that for all these other things. So,
but if I remember correctly, the governor has said that he would never stand in the way of tax reduction for Mississippians. Right? I mean, I know that the goal is eliminate the personal income tax, but he has also, if I remember correctly, said, I'm not going to veto legislation that reduces taxes for Mississippians.
And so the devil will be in the details of that.
Jeez.
We'll see where we get.
All right, so the revenue
I am
and
smart
expenses
enough
piece.
around here to never say never, but at the same time, what I'm telling you is it's a strong position for the House. And, if folks want to talk about they are for this or they are for that, now's the time. Everybody says, well, we're for it. Well, let's see if you're for it. I got tickled. It was one day this week, maybe yesterday or day before, your counterpart that comes on a little later today, Gerard Gibbert, had a post. He said, in Mississippi, we're all about freedom and conservatism and free markets and all these great things, except when it comes to education and health care and mobile sports betting and alcohol sales and ballot initiatives. I would just point out on all of those issues, the House has sent very reasonable conservative measures to the Senate, and they find the same slow, quiet death. And I think on this one, on eliminating the personal income tax, we're probably not going to go quietly. We're probably not going to let that die that slow, quiet death and be talked to death and let the clock run out and there's confusion and the bills are complicated and all that good stuff that political speak you hear. We're probably not going there on this one. We're going to do it in the broad daylight. And if they don't want to do it, we'll get a budget and we'll get out of there. But we're not going to get into spending the money. We're not going to get into all the candy that folks like to get into. It'll be straightforward, and we'll move on. We're not going to check a box. The
elimination of the personal income tax only works if you can replace the revenues that are eliminated. And I know some of that is moving money around. Does House Bill 1 account for new expenditures that the state is going to be on the hook for? We don't have a specific ask, or at least I don't think we do yet, from Medicaid. But I think most everybody knows that the amount of money that the state is going to have to spend on Medicaid going forward is going up, and is going up significantly. Is there still enough money? Can you point to those numbers to cover additional expenses without putting the state in the red?
Yes, depending on, now, there are lots of unknowns surrounding the Medicaid program, specifically the one that you bring up, and I won't.
Because of what's going to happen at the federal level.
Yeah, because I won't chase that rabbit right now because it's extremely complex, and look, we're in no man's land when it comes to that because the Trump administration has said they're going to redo and rethink the whole ball of wax surrounding Medicaid, and certainly we have a large Medicaid population. I tell folks, if you're sitting at a red light or a four-way and you look around, one of those four people is probably on Medicaid in Mississippi. If all four of you hit that. Now, in Oxford, y'all have roundabouts, so you just keep going around in a circle. But where I am, we all hit a four-way stop, and one of the four of you is on Medicaid in Mississippi. And so with those kind of statistics, we do have to be very careful when it comes to our revenue and covering core functions of government. But I would say, specifically when it comes to Medicaid, I think the jury's out on how we do that entire program. And when you say have to, Mississippians, there are certain things they expect from their government. There's certain things that they think we kind of get outside the bounds of that. And so restricting revenue with tax cuts, it's easy to make budgets, Richard, when you've got an extra $600 to $800 million to $1 billion sitting over here. It's easy to make budgets. When somebody asks for an extra $50 million or $40 million, you just grab it out of that extra over there. What makes our budgeters and our appropriators really, really work and earn their money is when we say we're going to function at a high level for sure, and fund core functions of government, but in a way that Mississippians expect us to budget and not just take the easy way out and just throw the money at it. Because people don't handle taxpayer money the way they handle their own money. And I know that. I've been in the room when that stuff's going on, and it's not pretty. So to answer your question, yes, nobody's here to slash budgets. Nobody's here to go back to some archaic. We're finally digging out of some holes with corrections and with CPS and our mental health. Nobody wants to go back to those days where we're getting sued or potentially getting sued on issues. We want to move away from those. But I would just tell you, government has grown over the last few years. Budgets have increased significantly. Some of that inflation, some of that from the federal surplus, whatever you want to call it. But there's no denying we've grown government plenty over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years. It's time for us to tighten the belt a little bit and figure it out instead of just throwing money at it. And I expect you'll see that in the form of the budgets that the House starts proposing this week. You'll see those bills start tracking that are level funding government year over year. And with this surplus, this 10%, 8 to 10% surplus we keep running, certainly there's room there in and of itself to absorb a large tax cut. That's why the House bill cuts a full % of personal income tax, and House Bill 1 cuts it the very first year, goes from 4 to 3. That's a $500 million cut right out of the chute. Now, we have attempted to replace part of that revenue by moving to a consumption-based economy and raising the sales tax slightly while still remaining competitive with our surrounding states when it comes to sales tax. We're not married to that, but you have to acknowledge on some front, if we're moving away from personal income tax and moving to a consumption-based economy, which if you were setting it up from scratch or if Lance was setting it up from scratch, that's the way everybody would do it. You wouldn't tax people's work and their income and their productivity. You would tax on the things that they buy and their consumption. That's the way the states that are just killing it, that's the way they fund their government. And we can get there. And the House bill does it over a conservative, lengthy amount of time, 3/10 a year after the first year. That's very doable. We've never not grown in revenues 2 to 3% historically. That's more than enough to absorb that. With a slight increase in the sales tax, it's easily doable if folks watch how we spend our money. And I think it's going to take that part.
Timeline on the Senate proposal is a little more aggressive than the House proposal, but the House proposal goes farther in the long run. In terms of that elimination. Revenues quickly, so the mid-year report had the state tracking about $100 million off pace from a year ago. I talked to someone a couple of days ago that said the following month's update got it really close to net zero at this point. Is that accurate?
That's correct. We were up, last time I saw, $54 million for January, so we're back. We're going to hit right around the number. Look, Those folks are mighty smart that peg that number of what we're going to get, and they may miss it by $50 million, but on $7.8 billion, that's pretty close if they're within $50 million. We're not worried about that number. That number's going to hit just right. Out years, yeah, we got to watch them. It's a real issue. Hey, don't forget, House Bill 1 speaks to PERS and funds $100 million annually to help that deficit. The Senate plan just doesn't go there.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we're going to, rub sticks together and find some money somewhere else. I don't know.
Well, that obviously would be separate legislation altogether, which would be a whole nother debate. We'll wrap things up.
No, sir. It's in House Bill 1, Richard. $100 million a year.
I'm saying on the Senate side, though, if the Senate took it up,
yep.
I mean, PERS has to be addressed at some point.
We've learned about phantom bills from the Senate. They just never seem to show up.
Speaker of the House, Jason White. We'll wrap it up with him coming up next.
From the better
morning, partner. The sun is up, the coffee is on, and you're starting your day right. Mornings with Richard Cross here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
I think there are probably other things that we need to talk about, and yet the messages are coming in fast and furious as we talk about tax reform, House Bill 1, the Senate's plan, or as Speaker White says, the Senate's lack of a plan, and more. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi. I'm going to combine a couple of questions that we've gotten on the C Spire text line. See where you go with this. Speaker White says he doesn't want to chase rabbits. Unfortunately, some rabbits need to be caught before committing to reduced revenue. Does the Speaker subscribe to responsibly cutting government and then cutting taxes, or just chopping the head off and letting it bleed out for someone else to fix later?
Well, I would tell you, I think you'll see in the budget this year where we are. As far as chopping the head off and letting it bleed out for somebody else to fix later, politicians are nothing. Nobody's voting for this plan saying, I want to wreck state government and I'll let the door slam on the way out for somebody else to fix it. A whole lot of smart people looked at the plan. It didn't just show up in the middle of the night. And for, I got tickled at the Lieutenant Governor's press conference on their ideas for a tax reform or tax cut plan. One of his reporters asked him a question about, did the Legislative Budget Office verify these numbers? And he kind of smiled and said, yes. Well, Legislative Budget Office verifies all the numbers. They verified the numbers in the House bill plan. It's a matter of what is the priority. And certainly, if you are cutting revenue that's coming in, you're going to have to look close at budgets. But I think that forces the issue a little bit, which I'm fine with, and my people are fine with. Yes, if you're going to cut income tax and get it to zero and totally eliminate that portion of the way we gather revenue to fund state government, yes, you're going to have to replace it or find other revenue. That's what House Bill 1 attempts to do. That's what I would tell you it does. But yes, the combination is that and controlling spending. And I think you're going to see that. I think you've seen that. But there's no denying we made a historic investment in K-12 public education last year. Now, Republicans don't get a big pat on the back for that because we're the bad old Republicans who supposedly don't like public education. So we didn't, there were no ceremonies or great celebrations last year when we made that historic investment. But it was the right thing to do. And we're finally up on par. And we can have a level fund budget this year, year over year, that also fully funds that formula going forward. And I think you'll see that. Certainly, I hope whoever's elected later on will find that our state is in a good place. And nobody that's worked on this plan wants anything but that. So the idea of you can't replace it, well, those are the people that are worried about spending money. Those are the people that are worried about growing government. We're worried about holding it down. Does this force the issue a little bit? Certainly it does. Certainly it does. But I welcome that.
Let me ask you this, and I know this is kind of apples to oranges. I'm thinking about this from investment strategy. You've heard people always say, you got to spend money to make money. Is this a scenario where the House is saying we're going to go with a little bit more aggressive investment strategy because we believe there's a long horizon to reap the rewards of doing this. And the Senate is saying, no, we're going to rely on savings accounts that are generating interest, and we're just going to grow slowly, and we think we're going to be in a good place. That may not be the best metaphor or comparison, but is that comparable?
I can't say that it's not. And look, Richard, I'm poking my Senate colleagues a little bit this morning, but I want to be clear about this. I am glad.
Yeah, you were clear about that.
They have unveiled an attempt to cut the income tax and to cut the grocery tax and to find more revenue for roads and bridges. Those are incredibly positive things. That is an incredibly positive first step. I'm glad for that. What I'm now urging and going to urge them to do, and my job going forward over these next few weeks, will be to try to convince them that the way for Mississippi going forward is to move away from the personal income tax and move to a consumption-based economy. I do think that takes a slight raise in the sales tax.
Okay.
We can do that and remain more than competitive with our sister states and move away. If we're too fast with the way we want to do it, I'm all ears from them on how we get there. But to just check a box, I just don't think that's going to work with my House colleagues.
On a scale of 1 to 10, what is the fiscal risk for the state of Mississippi going forward if House Bill 1 was adopted as it is written?
I would tell you there's no fiscal risk. And here's the other thing I would tell you. The Senate tells you, well, we come in every year, we can cut some more in a few years and cut some more. Guess what? We come in every year. If House Bill 1 is the reckless disaster that some of those on the other end call it, that will bear that out. They'll be here to handle those things going forward. Nobody's not talking about funding core functions of government.
Jason White, Speaker of the House, Mississippi House of Representatives. Sorry that this was
Richard,
like a one-topic conversation.
Congrats on your new post. We're glad you are where you are, and glad for you to be here.
Thank you for your time.
I know Paul is smiling down and probably laughing at me this morning.
Wouldn't be the first time, though.
No, it wouldn't be.
Jason White, Speaker of the House. Look forward to talking with you again soon.
Good to be with you, Richard.
Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk Mississippi. We're back after this.
No matter where you're from, Abbeville, Batesville, D'Iberville, or any other ville in the SIP, you're starting your day off right. Mornings with Richard Cross. Super Talk Mississippi.
Rolling on with you on this Tuesday morning, the 18th of February. This is Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk Mississippi. Pleased to be with you. Thank you to Jason White, Speaker of the House of Representatives in Mississippi, for joining us. Really thought that we might get to the school choice conversation and the paid parental leave for state employees conversation. I probably should have known better when we start talking tax reform. It kind of stays there. And obviously from the C Spire text line, that's something that is very important to all of you. 601-879-4395. If you got questions, you want to join the conversation, that's the way to do it. 601-879-4395. Pleased, though, to welcome another guest right now. Dan Stein joins us. He is with FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. Dan, appreciate a few minutes of your time this morning. It has been a busy 29 days since Inauguration Day with Donald Trump and his immigration plans being put in place by Tom Homan and Kristi Noem and others that are involved in this administration. We've read so many stories and people have so many varying opinions about administration. What grade, though, do you give the Trump administration for this first 4 weeks in terms of doing what they said they were going to do during the campaign?
Oh, well, on immigration, certainly they would get an A+ for execution and probably a B- for communication because, there's some conflicting messages coming out of the administration in terms of who actually they're prioritizing and why. But the execution is excellent. They're really going after these non-cooperating nullification type jurisdictions that don't want to honor federal detainers or respect federal immigration law, that actually obstruct federal enforcement. Lawsuits being filed now by Pam Bondi and DOJ against New York and Illinois. Those are all very important. And Tom Homan, of course, is a kind of take no prisoners tough guy. I know him really well. He's determined to execute the original mission of ICE, go back in there and not just find people who are serious criminals. But he says, look, if you're here illegally, you're not going to be exempted. And really politically putting the Democrats in a very difficult position, which they've frankly put themselves in, by essentially saying, we don't care if you break immigration law, come on in and we're going to give you all kinds of benefits, public schools, housing assistance, school lunch programs, welfare, billions and billions of dollars to shadowy nonprofit so-called NGOs that are using money, we assume, legitimately, but to accommodate people who are essentially here illegally. And so overall, there's a very aggressive situation. They're taking the gloves off and they're really going after the bad guys and doing what they said they were going to do.
The southern border issue is far more well documented than the northern border issue. People have talked about, people coming from Mexico, from Central American countries, the fentanyl crisis that goes along with that. I don't feel like there's been nearly as much conversation until recently about what's happening on the northern border, the Canadian border. Can you give us a little insight as to, in terms of who has been coming illegally into the country from the north as opposed to the south, and how big of a concern that is or should be?
Historically, the northern border has not been anything like the southern border as a security issue or anything else, because the difficulty of people getting to Canada with a respectable ocean on either side, and the fact is that Canada has been relatively less concerned about immigration because they also figure people come illegally, they're probably planning to come to the U.S. anyhow. So historically, we saw a lot of Chinese illegal immigration coming in through Canada. Increasingly, as the cartels have become better financed and sophisticated in Mexico, they've been flying people into Canada. There are advertisements going on right now. For some reason, my headset keeps coming out. Anyway, getting that back in there. People have been historically, the cartels are now bringing in people through, from Mexico, flying them into Canada, because Canada notoriously has a very lax land border enforcement. There are many places along the U.S.-Canadian border, there's no Border Patrol presence at all. So they understand that. And as you naturally toughen up things on the southern border, you're going to see traffic move to the northern border. So fentanyl and other things are still coming in through the northern border, and part of why President Trump has been threatening tariffs against Canada, which is theoretically a good friendly neighbor, is because all these drugs are coming in now through Canada, and the Chinese-Canadian pipeline continues to grow and get worse. So. But the bigger problem, of course, Richard, is that, we have this problem with the fact that, Biden administration essentially it cost nothing to just parole in an illegal alien with a promise of an asylum hearing years down the line with all kinds of public benefits. It's extremely complex to remove aliens once they're in the country for any length of time. Now, for aliens who've had their day in court, they've had immigration hearings, they've been ordered finally removed, there's no further recourse, easier to remove them, summary exclusion, you put them on a plane, and certainly serious criminals. But for the garden variety illegal alien who's just been here a while, when you have to put them in removal proceedings, it's a much more complex, laborious process. There's all kinds of ways of delaying it. There's massive backlogs. And that internal machinery is something that the Trump administration has to deal with as well. So,
to me, that's one of the fascinating.
Are important.
Forgive me for interrupting. To me, that's the most fascinating piece of this immigration discussion. I feel like at this point, not taking Tom Homan at his word is a bad idea. Like he kind of tells you this is what we're going to do, and then they're doing it, and there's not a lot of gray area there. But my thought all along, as we were going through the campaign season and we were talking about deporting illegal aliens, was they're going to focus on the violent ones. They're going to focus on the criminals. There's not going to be as big a focus on the people who have been living here in the United States, who are working, many of whom are paying taxes themselves. That's not going to be nearly as big a part of the process. Is it going to be a big part of the process, or are we going to see after the southern border is settled, maybe not completely, but close, like it is right now, that we get to a more a normal, a status quo almost?
Hopefully not. The problem with basically saying we're going to only go after the bad guys is, first of all, politicians who are basically chicken are going to resort to that cover and say, oh, don't worry, they're only deporting criminal aliens, people who are serious murderers, rapists, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And remember that the Biden administration took the position of, well, we're going to prioritize based on resources the bad guys. Well, that was a signal all around the world that if you're not a bad guy, if you will, if you're not a criminal who commits independent crimes, it's okay to keep trying to get into the U.S., which is what exactly happened under Biden. So you don't want the Trump administration to communicate the same messaging. Oh, well, if you're not a independently violent criminal, we're not going to make you a priority. And Homan has tried, and this is where I gave them the B- on messaging, because he goes back and forth between what he's saying is a priority. But in the end, Biden admitted millions and millions of people who should not have been led into the country. And they're here under parole, they're here under asylum, all these illegal programs that he created as essentially a secondary immigration program. It was a complete fraud on the American people to parole in an alien, give them a hearing date for an asylum hearing years down the line, and then push Congress to pass an amnesty program knowing they were never going to go home. And so theoretically, I guess if they seal the borders and then they only go after criminals and then let everybody else stay, that's not a status quo that's tenable. It's not a status quo that's going to remove the incentive for international smuggling operations to keep trying to get people into the country. You have to start enforcing the immigration laws simply because, as Caroline Leavitt has said, breaking the immigration law is often a criminal offense. Yeah. Particularly willfully crossing without inspection, re-entering after deportation is a felony. And of course, employers have to be brought into the mix with a robust worksite enforcement, which again, agricultural communities, the growers are very powerful. They object to that. But if you're ever going to deter illegal immigration, you can't just say we're only going to deport people who have committed violent crimes, for example. And we're adamant about the fact that they really need to be more aggressive. After an initial effort to get rid of people with final orders of removal and serious criminals and going after sanctuary jurisdictions, it's time to get to the rest of them and start removing people who are simply here in violation of immigration law.
Dan, you got time to hang with us for a couple more minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Dan Stein, president of FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform. We are going to give Dan Stein the power of the pen when we come back. We are going to let him spell out what United States immigration policy should be that makes sense for this country. We'll do that on the other side of this break. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk, Mississippi. We're back with you. Don't forget, you can join the conversation. C-Spire text line, 601-879-4395.
All right, now to the important stuff.
Your VIP pass to hear what the most influential Mississippians are talking about.
This is very important.
Huge news. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi.
Glad to have you along this morning. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi. Dan Stein is my guest. He's the president of the Federation for American Immigration Reform, FAIR. And I said we were going to give you the power of the pen before the break. One of the great things historically about the United States is that, we look different and we come from different places and we come from different backgrounds. And legal immigration through our nation's history has been kind of one of the bedrocks of what makes us what we are. This is obviously a very different time when we're talking about illegal immigration and unchecked illegals coming in and just a flood to our system and the economy and everything that goes with it. So, in terms of crafting the perfect or close to perfect immigration policy for the United States, what does that look like for you? If I said, you draw it up, Congress is going to pass it, there's not going to be a lot of pushback, what does a comprehensive policy look like?
That's a good question, Richard. And, since I started working on this subject now about 43 years ago, the world population's increased by 3 billion, 3.5 billion people, billions. And, in 1776, the population of the world was very small. The average person had no ability to go anywhere more than 10 miles away from their home their whole lifetime. This is a very different world. You've got hundreds of millions of people on the move every day. There's billions of people who want to move to a handful of wealthy countries. And the reality is, new occasions teach new duties, and we have to disenthrall ourselves from the mythology of some of the bromides that you started the little segment here with, which is basically, yes, we're a nation of immigrants, we're a nation of settlers. Different small groups came early. We populated a continent with maybe 50,000 immigrants coming a year. What's happening today is historically unprecedented, and the immigration system is overloaded by way too many people trying to use it. And the reality that special interests try to use immigration to lower labor costs and incentivize it. And then you have family preference categories that essentially say if you give somebody a green card and then citizenship, they get to petition a whole bunch of relatives. And so we have all these super highways of non-immigrants, illegal aliens, and others pouring into the country, and then this bottleneck of relatively fixed number of green cards that Congress set up for an immigration system that was much lower. And now you have these massive backlogs, and you have all this political pressure coming from different angles. So you have to move the system back into something that's rectified to reduce the overall flow of people coming in and out of the country. Recognizing you need tourism and other things, if you want to have annual immigration rates of between 500,000 and 1 million, which would make sense for a country this big, you have to reduce the long-term non-immigrant or visa categories of foreign workers. I mean, almost all the new jobs under Biden's administration went to foreign workers. To the extent Americans were getting any jobs, they were getting jobs in the government. Now Trump's firing government workers, he's firing U.S. citizens, and you have all these foreign workers in the labor force. And Americans need to find good jobs, good paying jobs. They're not going to find them unless you reduce foreign worker flows. You have to reform the non-immigrant visa program, dramatically reduce these foreign worker categories. You also have to stop family chain migration. The preference system should say, if a company really needs someone with extraordinary merit and ability whose productive potential will expand the U.S. economy, you tell that person, you come in, you can bring your spouse, your unmarried minor children. But if you want to visit Uncle Harry and Aunt Harriet, you're going to have to fly back home, right? Because it's very easy to fly back home all over the world right now. There's no reason why you should be bringing all these relatives. Okay, this isn't 1830. All right, where you're never going to see the old country again. And then you set an annual cap, 300, 400,000 permanent visas, and you have very limited stays for non-immigrant visa holders. They have to maintain their intention to return back home. Foreign students have to go back home instead of making this thing a cheap labor gravy train for the tech companies. And then you basically have a limited number of people with super skills, extraordinary merit and ability who can create jobs for everybody. And that's a small number of people relative to the millions of people who are illiterate in any language, reading at the 5th grade reading level or less, who want to move to a country like the U.S. just because their actuarial income stream multiplies by about 15,000 just by getting into the U.S.
What about the citizenship process?
But we can't do that.
Is there still a citizenship process in your mind?
Well, in the old days, it was called the Immigration and Naturalization Service. Okay, immigration was the first step, naturalization the last. During that period of time, you learned what it meant, not only English, but you learned what it meant to be part of a self-governing democracy, that a citizen is an office holder in a democracy who basically participates in the management of the country. In a democratic system, it's really a republic, but basically responds to the voters through a process that puts people in place who represent our interests. Mm-hmm. And they need to learn that in terms of being active participants in citizenship. Citizenship has both rights and responsibilities. To learn those responsibilities, that's supposed to be a big part of the naturalization process. This whole issue of the 14th Amendment, which was passed to rectify the fact that states could bar their own people being born there from eligibility for citizenship before the Civil War, which was manifested in the Dred Scott case. The language was designed to make sure that anybody born in the U.S. who would owe exclusive fidelity politically to the U.S. would be a citizen, including former slaves. Well, today it's like, birth tourism, or somebody comes illegally, a mom in labor runs into a hospital in El Paso, has the baby, and takes the birth record out, and now the kid's a citizen forever. Like, this can't possibly be what the framers of the 14th Amendment, one party drafting by Republican Party, right? No debate. We see that. Anyway, I won't digress. The problem with one party drafting is that you get crappy legislation. Well, the 14th Amendment is apparently ambiguous, but we don't think it is, because why do you want to have your citizenship cheapened in this way? All right, if the parents are here lawfully as green card holders, or they're citizens, or at least the father's a citizen at least, or something like that, maybe then you have birthright citizenship. And to Trump's credit, he's going to get this thing litigated to the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court's never passed on it. But naturalization is supposed to be a sacred part of the process of learning what it means not to live under a tyrant, a potentate, a dictator, but somebody who represents we the people. And that's why citizenship is an important process that needs to be taken very seriously. Naturalization does.
Yeah. Just a couple of minutes left with Dan Stein. He is with FAIR, president of FAIR, Federation for American Immigration Reform. Yet the police chief in Boston saying we're going to protect illegal immigrants. Letitia James, the AG in New York, is a disaster. Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Tom Homan has said we're going after these people. It appears that Pam Bondi is open to the idea of going after these people. Are we going to see the police chief in Boston, the attorney general in New York, in jail?
Well, obstructing immigration law enforcement is a felony. There's something called felony harboring under the immigration law. You do anything to facilitate somebody here illegally remaining, secrete them from governing authorities, federal authorities. That's a felony. Tom Homan mentions that all the time.
He does.
And these so-called non-cooperating jurisdictions, sanctuary they call them. I mean, remember that illegal immigration is a form of cheap, exploitable labor. It's not, in many ways, that much different from the institution of slavery. Now, when the southern states decided that through nullification, they called it, they would just ignore or refuse to obey federal law, it led to the Civil War. Well, who was the party that defended slavery, right? You remember? I mean, the Democrats, right? Now the Democrats are in the same position of supporting a quasi-exploitable labor class.
The Democrats of the 1800s were a little different than the Democrats of today.
Well, frankly, on this issue, not much, because in the end, they're putting themselves in the position of saying, you can't take who's gonna, serve us food in restaurants? Who's gonna bus our tables? Who's gonna pick our crops? I mean, they say this stuff now. The Democratic Party used to be a pro-labor union party. Remember, the Democrats' position on immigration was strong border control from Franklin Roosevelt all the way up through the beginning of the Clinton administration, because they had a strong labor party, strong labor background, unionized labor. With all the outsourcing, NAFTA and everything else, that union support collapsed. Democratic Party had to find a new constituency, and they decided, lo and behold, the emerging minorities represented by mass immigration were they're going to be their new constituency, along with their other special interest identity groups. And so now they basically decided, oh, yeah, it doesn't matter if American workers are hurt or if wages are suppressed or the taxpayers getting taken to the cleaners. We're just basically going to defend this process because it gives us an advantage politically, we think. Now, in this last election, they obviously have a crisis because they understand finally, maybe if they learn that this is a political disaster. The American people aren't going to put up with it.
Dan, we're out of time. I appreciate your time. Enjoy the conversation, and I wish we had gotten to Gitmo. I think Guantanamo Bay is the role that it plays in this is fascinating. Maybe we can do that next time. Thanks so much, and have a great day.
Hey, thanks, Richard. Great to see you.
Dan Stein, president of FAIR, joining us. Mornings with Richard Cross, SuperTalk, Mississippi. Ooh, a lot there. Interesting conversation. Quick time out. We are back with you. About half an hour left on this Tuesday morning, February 18th.
Wake up, get up, and start your day right with Mornings with Richard Cross here on Super Talk, Mississippi.
What's a frequency cannon? It's your vintage. I was brain dead, locked out, no, not up to speed. I thought I packed you an idiot street.
Thanks for being with us. Mornings with Richard Cross on Super Talk, Mississippi. You can join the conversation on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395, 601-879-4395. A lot of your messages coming in this morning. Very much a big picture conversation there with Dan Stein. Interesting stuff. He obviously has worked in the immigration space for a really long time and has strong opinions, and sounds like likes some of the things he sees, but maybe doesn't think that some of what we're doing goes far enough. I'm sure there are people that are completely on board with that, and then others who are like, soften a little bit. There is little that is being talked about nationally right now more than DOGE. The Department of Government Efficiency. Lance, it's such a fascinating topic. And it's a fascinating topic because on the campaign trail from, January, February last year through the election in November, I guess it was probably sometime in the summer when Elon Musk really came onto the scene. Roughly around the time that Donald Trump was shot in that field in Pennsylvania, that Donald Trump said, we're going to find waste. We're going to find fraud. And then he came up with DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency. And Elon Musk here is going to lead it. And then he spent the final 4 months of the campaign telling you this is going to happen. We're going to go through the institutions within the United States government, within the United States bureaucracy, department by department, expense by expense, line by line, and we're going to find out what's real and what's bad and what's not. We're going to find out what's necessary and what's wasteful. And we're going to root that out. And people loved the idea of that. But now you've even got some Republicans who are like, hold on now, you might be going a little too fast. Are we giving too much access to the Doge bros they're calling them? The young tech bros that are part of Doge? They're going in and they're looking for misspent money, which feels like the easiest piece of figuring out how to get the debt situation under control. All right, so think about your family situation. You look up and you're like, all right, we've got credit card debt, we've got a mortgage, we've got car payments, we've got recurring monthly bills. Our costs are more than they have ever been because of inflation and increased cost related to COVID from 4 or 5 years ago and stuff that's never gone back down. Like, we've got to get our financial situation under control as a family. And how do you do that? Well, the first thing we got to do is we got to take a look at where we are. All right, how much money are we making? What is our income? How much money is going out? This is like very much a Dave Ramsey type thing, right? I mean, we're gonna build a budget. But whether if you don't like Dave Ramsey and you don't want to call it a budget, let's just say we're just going to do an overall evaluation of where we are financially. What do we have coming in? What do we have going out? What's necessary? What's extra? What extra do we want to hold on to, and what extra are we willing to let go of? And then, once we get all of those things and we kind of put it in a way that we can look at it and we can digest it, can we continue to function? Do we have enough revenue to handle our expenses? The necessary expenses, the discretionary expenses, but the expenses. And in the process of going through this and looking at all of your expenses, you realize that both you and your wife have a YouTube TV account. Like, you've signed up for it and she signed up for it, and you don't need two of them. And so there's a duplicate expense there. And you realize that you've got 3 apps on your phone that you never use, but you're paying $8.99 a month for. And you realize that you have a membership to a health club, but you bought a Peloton and you use it 5 days a week, but you forgot to cancel the membership to the health club. And the list goes on. And these are not even necessary expenses or discretionary expenses. They're just wasted money. You rented a storage unit 11 years ago. You put a bunch of stuff in it. You haven't needed any of that stuff. By the way, I'm speaking to myself right now. You haven't needed any of that stuff for 11 years. You kind of forget that you've even got it, and yet you're paying $89 or $139 a month for a storage unit. And so the very first thing you do is you're like, okay, well, we just eliminated $85 a month on one of those YouTube TV accounts, and we eliminated 3 apps on our phone, and we took half of a Saturday morning and we cleaned out the storage unit. Wow. We just saved ourselves $4,000 a year and didn't do anything. Like, we didn't change anything about who we are or how we live. We haven't even had to make hard decisions yet about, do we need to skip a family vacation this year? We simply just got rid of waste. Money that we might as well have been taking a lighter to and just burning it. Because that's what it was doing. It was just being burned. Doge is kind of doing the same thing. Yes, there have been layoffs. Yes, there have been cuts. Some of those may be a little too reactionary. But the first thing they're doing is just an overview. They're going in and they're saying, we think there's Social Security payments that are being paid to dead people. We think there's money to USAID that's supporting gender-affirming programs in Ghana. That doesn't make sense. And there are billions, if not hundreds of billions of dollars that are just being wasted. And I love that we keep going back to, well, I mean, $100 billion is a drop in the bucket as it pertains to a $37 trillion deficit. Well, yeah, it is. But what if you find, well, you add up those hundreds of billions of dollars in different areas and different programs and different departments, and all of a sudden you came up with $2.7 trillion.
Well, pennies are like seeds, buddy. I mean, enough of them, you throw them out, it takes millions upon millions to get a crop. and you need the conditions and all the good things to happen. And, pennies matter, just like a seed matters. And if you throw them away, that's what you're doing. And two, I don't know if we've really fully grasped the cost of COVID. And there's a lot of money that just got thrown around out there across 2 administrations that, I can imagine there was some that probably went to places it shouldn't have. And a lot of folks are scared you're going to uncover some of those things. And
Ceasefire text line, Elon is an illegal immigrant who came on a student visa and then dropped out. He needs to be deported. He also is getting federal contracts with his companies benefiting him while hurting Americans. Said differently, Elon Musk has done more in 4 weeks for the financial health of the United States of America than most people do in 10 lifetimes. And which federal contract are you pointing to? Are you pointing to the SpaceX contracts where Elon Musk's companies are doing more with greater efficiency than NASA ever could have imagined doing? Is it that? Or is it the $400 million for Tesla Cybertrucks, that contract, that the Biden administration put in place? Which is it? U.S. District Judge Tanya Chutkan held a hearing yesterday on a request from 14 states for a temporary restraining order seeking to curtail Musk's power and Trump's quest to downsize the federal government. Said she would rule within 24 hours. That ruling is expected today. Chutkan questioned the authority of Elon Musk and Doge, but was skeptical of a request to block Doge from accessing sensitive data and firing employees at half a dozen federal agencies. Not sure that the states have made the case that they needed to make. We'll wrap it up with you coming up next. Mornings with Richard Cross, Super Talk, Mississippi.
From the Venable 3.
You're waking up to what's happening. Mornings with Richard Cross. Right now on Super Talk, Mississippi.
By the way, a bit of a misguided text claiming that Elon Musk is an illegal alien. Got his American citizenship in 2002. But hey, that's just facts.
Yeah, don't worry about facts around there.
I mean, just throw stuff out there and assume that this listening audience is just going to let that slide. No, Daniel in Boonville said the previous texter was an idiot that doesn't know how to Google something. And as liberal as Google is, I assume that this is true. Richard, that text that said Elon was an illegal alien, I'd suggest he doesn't know what he's talking about. How does an illegal alien get a top secret security clearance in the United States? Yeah, it's not.
Joe Biden was handing him out like candy, butterscotch in his pocket.
Not really how it works. Parts of North Mississippi under a winter weather advisory that goes into effect at noon today and lasts until noon tomorrow. An expectation for mixed precip, total snow accumulations up to 2 inches, ice accumulations around a light glaze. That's for portions of East Arkansas, North Mississippi, and West Tennessee. You can plan on slippery road conditions. Worst parts in North Mississippi are expected after midnight tonight. Slow down. Be careful. It's going to be really, really cold. Even if we are able to avoid some of the snow and the ice in northern parts of the state of Mississippi, it's going to be really, really cold. I'm speaking to myself, and I remind you to turn the water drip on and avoid frozen pipes, and especially make sure that your pets are taken care of. If you have pets that normally spend the night outside, tonight may not be the night for that. So laundry room, garage, get them a warm bed, heater, whatever it is that you need to make sure that they are okay. Or just let them sleep in the bed with you, whatever. Whatever works. Not judging. No judgment here at all. Tomorrow, a good show coming up for you tomorrow morning. Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith will join us. She was in Mississippi over the weekend with President's Day traveling back to D.C. today. She'll be back in D.C. tomorrow morning as Congress gets back to work, and look forward to a conversation with that. Also, Mississippi Senator Jeremy England will join us. We'll have lots to talk about with Jeremy England, and that should be fun. That should be fun. He certainly has been in the news.
That's going to be a good one.
Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann scheduled to be with us on Thursday morning, and so probably some counterpoints to what we heard from the Speaker of the House this morning, Jason White. I can assure you that I will ask Delbert Hosemann the exact same question that I asked Jason White at the end of our conversation today, and the question was simply, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the fiscal risk for the state of Mississippi as it pertains to House Bill 1? And he said there is no fiscal risk for the state of Mississippi with House Bill 1, which, of course, is the bill that the House put forward, the Build Up Mississippi Act, that would completely eliminate the state income tax, would reduce the grocery tax, would add a sales tax, would do some things with PERS. There's a lot there. I mean, it truly is a comprehensive tax reform bill. And Jason was quick to point out when we talked with him, Speaker White was quick to point out when we talked with him this morning, that he corrected me on that. He's like, well, we don't have a bill from the Senate. So we had a press conference from the Senate. We've got an outline. We've been told what is going to be in it. But in the same way that you hear sometimes words matter, bill text matters. And we don't actually have that bill text. We expect it. We assume it's coming. We have been told it's coming. But in fairness, we've been told it's coming since the Senate gavelled in the first week of January. And we haven't actually gotten the bill yet. Ask lots of questions, right? We've talked with Josh Harkins about it. We've talked about it with the Lieutenant Governor. We're going to continue to talk about it. But all we are doing is talking. We don't have the actual text of the bill that says this is the proposal of the Senate. What did you make, Lance, of the answer that Jason White gave when I asked if there is room for compromise? I said, is there a compromise to be made short of full elimination of personal income tax? Oh. And he hesitated, and he said, I've been here long enough to never say never.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to compromise, but it may be on the table. That may be how it gets done. Jason is smart. He's been through this process, and last year there was a lot of the never say never until never is never, and you learn that. And so, being cautious, especially when you don't know what the Senate's going to propose quite yet, the details.
That's right. And hopefully we will get that in the coming days, if not the coming hours. Thanks for being with us on this Tuesday morning. Glad, as always, to be with you, Lance. I appreciate you, my friend.
It's always fun, my man. Great job.
And we appreciate you. Thanks for all of your messages this morning on the C Spire text line, 601-879-4395. Always great to interact with you. What do you say we reconvene in about 21 hours and do it all over again? We hope you have a wonderful Tuesday. You've been listening to Mornings with Richard Cross on SuperTalk Mississippi.
SuperTalk Mississippi Media Production.